It's finally over. Phase 4 is done, which means I can finally sit back and relax. Or I can make a super long video about it. So this is, I watched all of Phase 4, so you don't have to. This was such a waste of time, but who cares? So I decided for the month of December, I was gonna binge it all. Yeah, that was the original plan. I'm really lazy, so this kind of bled into January. So this video is gonna come out sometime in February. I'll be honest with you, this whole Marvel Phase 4 thing, it wasn't great. We've gotten so much more content. We have shows now and specials. There's always some Marvel movie in the theater or a show running on Disney+. And what could be wrong with that? What's the issue? Well, there's a few actually. This video is everything. This is all of Phase 4, or at least the first half. We are delving into every issue, every problem, every movie, every show, every special. Phase 4 is a different kind of issue. This is a complex puzzle. This is right off the climax of Phase 3, and now we are picking up the pieces for something new. The big thing added with this phase are the Disney Plus series. These shows are really swing and a miss, and I like some, and others miss hard. The common reaction is that Phase 4 feels disconnected, disjointed, very all over the place, and I agree, they tried a lot of new stuff too quickly. There wasn't one continuous thing linking it all together. You could say the thing connecting it all was the multiverse. No, it's not, and I'll get to that later. This was just a whole lot of finishing off and setting up for the next phase, introducing new people and closing off legacy characters. This will forever be remembered as the setup phase. Are there things I would change? Yes, of course, but I understand why they did most of the things they did. Most. Keyword, most of the things. And just before we begin, I'm gonna be scoring these on the classic 10-point scale. But here, 5 is average. Like, not good, not bad, but average. In the middle. I know so many of you are used to 7 being the average, but that's just wrong. 10 is perfect, 1 is unbearable, 5 is the middle. So whenever I score something, think back to this moment. Also, these numbers don't mean anything. Nothing I say has any meaning. Don't believe a word I say. We have like 18 different shows and movies to get through, so we're gonna be going through these pretty fast. But we're gonna try and have some fun, because what's the point in living if not to enjoy it? First up is Wandavision. To cope or not to cope? There's the rub. This one is tricky. If I'm being completely honest, this wasn't great. There's a lot going on, and most of it kinda sucks. I will say this though, this is the most adventurous the MCU has been in a while, but only up to a certain point. These first few sitcom episodes were new and fresh, and I enjoyed those. Then it fell back into the same Marvel lane. The biggest mistake here is using Agatha as a villain. I will forever speak this truth. She was not needed here. This doesn't need to happen. It just causes this show to resort back to what Marvel feels comfortable with. It feels like they only included her here just to tie her into her own show. It's like they wanted to break free from the Marvel formula, and they were starting to, but couldn't resist a goofy villain. Marvel is very clear-cut. We have a good guy and a bad guy. But imagine if Wanda fit both roles. She had to come to a realization on her own that her enslaving a town full of people was wrong, or she embraces it and continues what she's doing. This show focuses so much on Wanda that most of the other characters get left in the dust. Monica Rambeau just kind of hangs out. She's just there. Like, I still don't know how or why she has powers. They very openly gloss over it. She just has powers now. White Vision becomes a new Vision, he leaves, and we never see him again. He never shows up in another project, no cameo, no Easter egg. It's like they forgot he existed. This is part of a much larger issue, and I'll get into that later. The show ends up portraying Wanda as more of a hero, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. She's a hero because she ended her own fantasy in where she enslaved a town full of people to roleplay a sitcom, which she created in the first place. So she's a hero because she stopped her own villainous actions. Yeah, no, that, I'm at a loss for words. This is not good. And how can I talk about WandaVision without talking about the dialogue?
And I survived because she chose to protect me.
She's holding thousands of people hostage.
And it could have been thousands more if she hadn't put up her own quarantine.
Overall, the show starts off kind of slow, and then it ramps up and quickly unravels itself to reveal an identical core, identical to everything else Marvel has released. They had something unique here, and it still devolved into a CGI final boss battle, which is also important, so keep that also in the back of your mind. Because what is Marvel if not a franchise known for devolving into mediocrity? I know it doesn't sound like it, but this is one of the better shows on the list, and for now, I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10. Let's move on. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This show was special to me. This is the first show I ever made videos on. I used to make these episode by episode breakdowns. I would try to find Easter eggs and references to comics. Looking back on it, they were pretty terrible videos. But now we moved on, and on rewatch, it's not as good as I remember. This is the definition of a mixed bag. There's so much going on that the show can't pick what it really wants to focus on. So it focuses on everything, and in doing so, really focuses on nothing. I'm a sucker for spy thriller action movies, and this show is very much that, but also not really that at the same time. It's a political drama with superheroes, taking it back to what it really means to be Captain America. This is good. I like this a lot, but then they had to throw in the Flag Smashers just to shake it up a bit. I don't even know if that's the A plot or the B plot. It's quite literally just there. They only matter at the very end. Let me tell you how every single episode functions. We'll get an episode about Buck and Sam committing some crime for about 40 minutes, then we'll cut to John Walker for about a minute just to remind you he's still here, and then at the very end we'll get a little tiny clip with the villain. It's very rhythmic, it's very formulaic, but it's not the right formula, because we don't ever see the villain. Even John Walker got an episode about him. I care more about him than the menace of the show. The whole time John and Carly are battling for the subplot, and neither really win. Both feel lukewarm. They just don't know how to handle villains. John exists in this gray area for most of the show. He gets more and more unstable the longer it goes on. He's very clearly not a good fit for Captain America, but he wants it. He wants to be the hero. He's a very selfish character. He's a great foil for Sam. We get these nice parallels throughout the course of this show just to reinforce why John can never be Captain America. He's brash, he's unstable, he rubs his status in your face.
Do you know who I am?
That's not a hero. That's not Captain America. He's nothing more than the exterior of a hero. He's an insecure little man-child. John doesn't understand all the connotations with being a hero. He hides behind the shield. He doesn't see it as a responsibility or a duty. He takes it for granted. He sees it as status. And Sam is the exact opposite. He's selfless. At the start, he retires the shield, retiring the legacy of Captain America, because he doesn't see a need for it. And slowly he finds the right reasons to pick it up and be that symbol. And that's something John will never understand. And Carly, yeah, there's not much to say. The more I talk about John, the less I see a need for Carly. Her only purpose is to be a catalyst for Sam to become Captain America. So she really isn't a villain. She's a placeholder, if you will. By the time I got to the halfway mark, she maybe had 3 scenes total. And the only scenes we actually ever get of her serve a formulaic purpose. For example, this scene was to show how ruthless she is and will kill people. But this is like the second time we've ever seen her, and the show's almost over. Like, I really don't care. How do you expect us to care even a tiny bit about the main villain if we don't ever see her? I want you to guess how much I cared about her death. I'll give you a minute. Yeah, I didn't. Her death meant nothing. They very clearly cannot find the balance between John and Carly where it can all work simultaneously, alongside all of the other moving parts like Zemo or Isaiah. I gotta say, both of those characters are infinitely more interesting than Carly. She just kind of is bad because the government is evil. She has no story behind her. We have no deeper motive that we can connect to. Zemo hates superheroes because they indirectly killed his family and he blames the Avengers. Same with Isaiah. He was used by the government and his story was erased from history. He was arrested and experimented on for 30 years. These are heavy characters, and Carly doesn't even remotely compare to either of them. I think it's a pretty big problem when you want to see the side characters more than the actual villain. And this is mainly because of how the show was structured. This doesn't feel like a show. It feels like a longer movie. It's like they stretched out a film, dropped in some filler in the empty spaces, and released it on Disney Plus as an exclusive. And that only hurts the show because it tries to mimic the same 3-act structure, but that only lasts until like the 4th episode, and they have to completely restart, making the middle chunk of the show feel like they fell off. And that makes the finale feel very rushed. You can very easily edit this down to a 2.5-hour spy thriller about Sam, Bucky, and John. Job done. The only reason this is a show and not a movie is for that sweet, sweet money. I love money. I just love money so much. Money, 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 money. But the show does do a few things well, mainly giving Sam and Buck the time to develop as characters. Sam really hasn't had any time to shine. He's just the dude with wings, the guy in the background. We finally get depth to his character. We see him living a normal life, fixing his boat. They allow Sam to grow, and I kinda care about his character character now. Bucky has a lot of growth here as well, but most of it is off screen. We get the odd therapy session here and there, but we never actually see him breaking the persona. We get a little 3-minute clip in Wakanda, and that's really it. It's not enough. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually kind of enjoyed these superheroes living normal lives. It weirdly humanizes them, like they are real people too. They have to do human things as well. It's a shame we don't see it more. You know what? I'd watch a whole show of them just fixing the boat. It's wholesome. It's cute. And what really makes the show work is the chemistry these two have. As a whole, this is a pretty inoffensive show, nothing multiversal, nothing super major that you need to watch this second. It's not urgent. It's relatively small scale. The only thing this does achieve is introducing new characters that we won't see for years, and that's only going to become an occurrence from here on out. So once again, keep that in the back of your mind with the rest of the stuff. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is the epitome of a 5 out of 10. Okay, so I wanted to try something new. In between the shows and the movies, we're going to have these little segments where we dive into the many blunders of Phase 4. And for our first segment, I wanted to talk about the Marvel Standard. This isn't a new thing. The Marvel Formula, the Marvel Standard, whatever you want to call it. It's been around since like Phase 2. And that Marvel Standard is keeping everything standard. Everything's so incredibly simple. There's nothing complex about the camera work. All the shots look the same. Everything is shoulder level. I don't think I've ever seen a close-up before. The lighting is so plain. The most creative thing the MCU has ever done is in Thor 1 when they decided to use Dutch angles. That's really it. That's all the ingenuity anyone has ever come up with. The directors have no control over their own projects. Marvel doesn't give them that freedom. The new Doctor Strange movie is the only real exception. Sam Raimi was allowed to get a bit freaky. I assume Marvel wants to keep their very mediocre standard for the mass appeal. Or if some of these movies stood out too much and flopped, it would hurt Marvel's reputation. It is quite literally what happened to DC at the start, and look at their movies now. Almost indistinguishable from Marvel movies. Shazam, Black Adam, blah blah blah. It's the same. It's just a Marvel movie with DC written all over it. I feel as though Marvel is a necessary mediocre. Marvel is as standard as it gets, so other movies in the genre can excel. If everything in this area of film was the very best, the most creative project every single time, then the best of the best wouldn't feel as good anymore. It would be so normalized that these really good movies couldn't be fully appreciated because it would be taken for granted. Think about it this way. We need MIDternals every now and again so creative miracles like the Batman can reach their insane level of quality, so people can appreciate the creative genius behind the better movies, the ones with passion put into them, the movies that feel real. This really stretches into every facet of film. We need the bad to appreciate the good to the fullest potential. We need the balance. Am I just coping? Maybe. I will tell you this though, once you accept this fact, you can find this inner peace. Everything starts to make sense. The thing is, Marvel is such a large chunk of the superhero space that there isn't much competition. Or how do I put this? There's not much out there for Marvel to propel forward. A genuinely good comic book movie is hard to find nowadays. A diamond in the rough, if you will. Why am I bringing it up in this video specifically? Well, I think the problem has gotten a lot worse. Phase 4 really is the beginning of the end. This Marvel standard is only going down. The bar is slowly dropping. The little goofs are starting to squeak through, and it's becoming really apparent. The best way I can describe how these projects feel is plasticky. They feel like plastic. It feels so drained of life. It feels sterile. Like this was made by a bunch of guys in suits. When you compare the stuff we have now to that of, I don't know, the first Avengers movie, you can see the difference. This feels so much more vibrant. This movie has a personality. You feel comfortable watching it. And that's just something you don't get watching Eternals. It's cold, it's callous, it's uninviting. But I want you to guess, what was the catalyst for the slow drop off in quality? And most likely the eventual death of Marvel. I'll give you a second. Take your time. It was the shows. And next up, the Loki show. I love Marvel. Loki is like getting slapped with a shoe full of cement, and when you look inside the shoe, it's just foam, but someone told you it was cement, so you believed it was cement. Okay, that probably made no sense. The first 2 episodes of Loki are pretty good, and then it just sort of devolves back into what Marvel is comfortable with. I feel like I'm repeating myself. Have I said this before? I was halfway through the season, and I said to myself, please stop. I want to like this show. Please don't do this. Episode 3 is such a drop in quality when compared to the first 2. The sets look like a soundstage, the CGI asteroids don't line up with the actors. Stuff like this makes the show look cheap. They're acting like they don't have money to spend. It reminds me of a CW show, and you should take that as the insult that it is, because this show really does have a lot going for it. Like, it has one of the best scores out of any Marvel show, let alone project. And then they do things like this. Like, come on, really? This is the only project that you actually have to watch to really understand the other stuff in Phase 4? This is the only thing with connection, because because if we're being honest, most people are still only gonna watch the movies and skip the shows. So when they watch the new Doctor Strange movie, they're like, hold on a second, what's all this about? So then they have to sift through all of the shows and pick and choose what is worth their time. Because if we're being honest, most of these stories are throwaways. They don't really matter. But to fully grasp everything Phase 4 has to offer, you have to watch Loki and WandaVision. That's it. That's all you really have to watch. Everything else is random. It feels like these were the only two shows really planned out, and they were making up everything else on the spot. And you're not missing much of anything by not watching these, but Loki is different. This is our first real introduction into the multiverse, into different timelines, into the TVA. In the first episode, they show how worthless Infinity Stones are, how they hold no value anymore, basically saying, Infinity Stones, yeah, those are old news. This new phase is so above all of phases 1 to 3 that Infinity Stones are paperweights. None of that matters anymore. The new thing is the multiverse, different timelines, controlling time, and it sucks because we never really get any other project that capitalizes on this event. Everything after this, excluding maybe 2 other projects, is street level. It's like they said, yeah, look how cool this is cosmic, this is the future of Marvel. But instead of that, we'll give you a dozen movies and shows about a bunch of guys fighting some other guys in the mean streets of some town somewhere. You know that meme of the guy and he's like, okay, I offer you this, in exchange, you get something way worse. That's basically what happened here. But enough of that, let's talk about the actual show. It's good. I mean, it's not exactly a surprise. It feels almost wasted being tied into this franchise. At the time of this releasing, I would have been super excited to talk about Loki, but I know what comes after this, and how much more comes after this. I know how this phase ends. Introducing Kang this early in the slate is a good thing, but never showing him again, like never in a post-credit scene or anything, was a mistake. Even Thanos showed up more, and with the sheer amount of projects we have, it's not hard to give him a cameo or something. Only giving him 1 episode out of 1 show out of 18 movie shows and specials isn't enough. By the way, the next time he shows up is in Phase 5. We just started Phase 4. By the end of this, I bet most of you will have forgotten he was ever here. Besides that blunder, Loki is finally able to be his own character, without the crutch of Thor or the Avengers. This is his thing. And Sylvie was a nice addition. Their romance was not needed. I've actually thought about this quite a lot. Why do we need love stories? I'm being so serious. What is the point? Especially here. It just doesn't fit. Not everything has to have some romance. Anyways, let's talk about the TVA for a second. So everyone in our universe, not the multiverse, just our universe, exists on the timeline, the sacred timeline. This is how everyone is supposed to act, how they will act from birth to death, start to finish. No one has real free will. They may think their actions constitute free will, but everything has been predetermined. But the very concept of the TVA means people also have free will, because the TVA's job is to get rid of people who are doing stuff they're not supposed to. So by definition, they are doing things on their own accord. So they do have free will and have done something outside of their predetermined route on the timeline. Even though the masses believe they have free will and do as they please day by day, they are just conforming to the timeline, except when they're not. This is where it gets complicated. The concept of free will is cosmic. Everything you do, you think you do because you can, because it is your choice. That illusion is the fake free will, and like I've said before, you are just conforming to the timeline. But this is where the TVA gets involved. Outside of your fake free will, you also do have real free will, where you can do anything you want that was not established for you by the sacred timeline. And that is a big no-no, because anything you do with your real free will go outside of what was predetermined for you, which goes against the sacred timeline, causing a branched reality to form because of your incorrect actions. And that is where the TVA steps in to prune you and send you to the end of time to be eaten by a fart cloud. You die because you exhibited genuine free will. That is the TVA's purpose. You do have free will, but you don't really know it, and if you do something you're not supposed to do, they murder you. Basically, the timeline is a house of cards, and one wrong move, and it all falls apart. One branch left unpruned, everything is ruined. Very much like the TVA, which is also built on a lie. A very similar house of cards, and if that lie is exposed and spreads, then the TVA crumbles. But where does the TVA even exist? Do they exist outside of time? Have an end? Does every universe have a timeline? Is there complete chaos in other universes? By the way, Jonathan Majors was the best part of the show, hands down. He was in 1 episode, but it was enough for me. Loki season 1 is like an 8 out of 10, probably the best show in part 1. We're not even halfway done, and I can already feel the fatigue setting in. I can't do this anymore. So here's Jordan. He's gonna tell you some issues that have cropped up so far. I'm gonna take 5. Jordan, you're on. Jordan? Let's go. Your turn.
Now, there are plenty of problems that fans have highlighted when it comes to Phase 4 of the MCU, but I think there are two that come to mind when I think of the more glaring problems, because not only do, I think they go hand in hand, I also think these two problems feed a little bit into everything else that is considered an issue. Phase 4 is stuffed. When push comes to shove, when asked to think of a criticism for this thing, that's probably what's gonna come to mind, something to that degree. There is a ton to unpack here, so much so that I had to scrap an idea on my channel where I looked at the whole of the Phase 4 content and just looked at the stuff from that year being 2022, and even that was busy as hell. To put it into perspective here, Phase 1 of the MCU has 6 movies. Phase 2 again has 6 movies, which are 2 very reasonable numbers. Phase 3 is a little meatier here because it clocks in with 11 movies, which sure, might seem like a lot. That's rations compared to what we're dealing with now. Phase 4, as of its conclusion with the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, officially has 7 movies, 2 special presentations and 9 shows. That's 18 projects in a single phase. Therein, ladies and gentlemen, lies the first problem. The oversaturation of the content itself. Now, it's pretty natural that if you consume too much of something or you get full or tired of something, eventually you're just going to move on. I feel like that's what's happened here with Marvel starting to utilise Disney Plus, which is a whole other issue entirely. They've stretched themselves very thin. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a time problem, a budget problem. There is something there that is making it very evident that the more content being put into this phase, the worse everything is for it. This is, in my opinion, the main problem with this entire phase. Every problem with this phase can potentially be pushed back to how much content they've tried to push out in 2 years. That is one of the main reasons that I brought up how much content each phase had. Am I the only one that has noticed that with every passing phase, each one of these films when it comes to CGI, writing, hell, even the care, it seems to be going lower and lower, with Phase 4 very much feeling like the bottom of the barrel. By pushing out all of this, I can see 2 projects at most here that feel as if there was more than an ounce of care put in. I genuinely feel the only one that comes across as fully developed and fully finished is Wakanda Forever. In a weird way, that is the only one that feels complete. No Way Home also, it still has my heart, it's still my favourite, but there's something about it. With those out of the way though, it's a dismal sight. It's awful to look at. These shows keep falling into these same traps as if they are unable to learn from mistakes. The movies just seem to be getting worse and worse, ending with whatever Love and Thunder was, and the special presentations, while I like them, I don't think they're sustainable. And at the expense of losing valuable time that could be going into making the films better or the shows better, as much as I love Werewolf by Night, I'm not sure I see its true worth. I denied this for a long time, being, Media13 Marvel shill. I was convincing myself that it was going to pick things up, Phase 4 towards its end would pick things up, and then it would be Phase 5 would start to pick things up. But the truth of the matter is, with this constant pushing and oversaturation of everything, the whole thing just feels a little aimless now. Not everything has to be connected. I am not saying that, and you will not ever hear me saying that. There's just far too much in this phase. There is far too much being pushed in at once, on top of all the multiverse stuff, which, I hate so much on so many levels that I could rant about for hours, but I want to save the editing work. Because all of that, as well as the sheer volume of content, it's just become overwhelming. The rapid outpour of content is harming this franchise, with every angle of it being hurt in some way. It is a genuinely sad decline for a franchise that I used to shill to the high heavens. It's absolutely clear to me why there were so many people, myself included, that experienced some form of burnout during this phase. Whether it be with the movies or, in my case, the shows. I mean, after Loki, I don't think there was a single one that I continued to watch weekly. There's just too much to keep up with now. This used to be a simplistic enough franchise to follow. Sure, you'd have some sort of interconnectivity, but for the most part, you didn't need that. Now, it's as if you need every single bit of knowledge in the fear that it's going to pop up sometime later. But yeah, for the most part, the MCU used to be a relatively easy franchise to digest, but in 2023, that feels like a distant memory. Gone are the days where there was a decent bit of time between projects to breathe. Now, it feels as though there's a different one every single week. In a desperate attempt to find relevance in itself after the ending of the Infinity Saga, the MCU's response seems to be one of fear almost, as if it's worried that it's gonna be forgotten if we're not reminded of its existence at every single opportunity. However, if they don't realise that the real magic in these projects came from the ones that had time, dedication and passion put into them, their woes are only gonna worsen. Phase 4 and its overbearing number of projects and installments and, movies, TV shows and special presentations has become what could potentially be the slow death of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Unfortunately, I can't say I'm that surprised with it right now, because at the end of the day, what is Marvel if not a franchise known for devolving into mediocrity?
I'll be honest, the last two segments took a bit too long, so this is gonna be a quick one. Black Widow is fine. It's not the worst movie in Phase 4. People just like to hate, but it falls victim to what I'm calling the prequel conundrum. It basically means because we know, for instance, Black Widow dies in Endgame, she cannot die in this movie, and it kind of removes the stakes or any tension that surrounds her, because no matter what, this movie has to flow directly into Endgame. There were definitely instances throughout where they could kill off a character around Natasha to give her some sort of emotional baggage, but it just doesn't happen, and that leaves Nat feeling like the exact same character from start to finish. This whole movie is basically a little side quest to fill in some time between movies that really isn't needed. It just doesn't fit with the rest of Phase 4. Honestly, if they released this before Infinity War, I think I'd care more. The thing is, they explored Natasha's family way more than her as a character. It almost felt like she took a back seat and was just there along for the ride. The reason the villain is evil is because they want to control the world, blah 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 blah, which is so... I'm over it. It's not like we've seen this exact same premise dozens of times before. Oh wait, we have. This feels like a movie I've already seen before. The whole secret spies control the world, this isn't new. This film was just the ending to a story that we never saw the start of. We should have gotten a prequel to this prequel. Taskmaster as a character was utterly wasted, and I know you've heard that a dozen times, but let me tell you why. It's because the comic version of this character is so much cooler than what we actually got, that there's no discussion between the two of them, that there's no competition. If the comic version didn't exist and this was the only time we've ever seen a character called Taskmaster before, then there definitely wouldn't be such an uproar, because we wouldn't have known what we were missing out on. But we do know, and it's way better than this. I think this was most people's first realization of the drop in quality when it comes to Phase 4. It may have only been a handful of shots, but this Spy Kids looking green screen doesn't cut it. It's not like the whole movie looks like this. The rest of it is kept up to the same very mediocre Marvel standard. But this is where the cracks really start to show for most people, and it's only gonna get worse. I think it's kind of funny how the writers just kind of forgot that Natasha is human. She doesn't have any powers, any serums, she's just human. So when they do stuff like this, all you could do is chuckle, and then they play it off like it's a joke, as it makes any sense that they survived this crash. But hey, what is Marvel if not a franchise known for devolving into mediocrity? Black Widow deserves more than this. This is a character that was constantly underwritten up until Endgame, and I think this movie should have been a trilogy or maybe a TV show, diving deep into the Red Room and Natasha's past, because this just doesn't do the character justice. She has such an elaborate and complex backstory, and it's all reduced to the occasional cryptic detail of a 30-second flashback. All things considered, this is like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. It wasn't great. Next up is What If. I mean, there's not much to say. It kind of goes off the rails at the end, trying to connect everything, but I guess I want more. They should do this with Star Wars though. That would be cool, but I don't know what to say outside of that. 5 out of 10, it's fine. And we're back with another segment. This time, I wanted to talk about the actual reason for the drop in quality, and that is that Marvel is cheap. They are stingy with their pay and ask for the most. Since Marvel has sped up their releases and there's something releasing every few months, this means the VFX workers have to work faster. You're probably thinking, okay, so they just hire more people, right? Yeah, no, it's actually the exact opposite. Marvel hires less workers than they should. Instead of 10, it's 2. I'm not just pulling those numbers out of nowhere, that is real. And because they are being worked to the bone, you'd think they'd be getting paid more. Once again, you're wrong. They're apparently getting paid 20% less than other movie studios, but it gets even worse. Marvel is kind of a bully. The directors behind these movies are very pushy. They don't really know how they want the film to look, so whenever the VFX team will send them a scene or something, something, they will ask for an endless amount of tweaks and changes. They'll ask for a handful of different versions of the same scene because they don't really like the first one. Or Marvel will force the VFX house to completely redo the third act of a movie, just change the entire ending a month or so before the movie comes out. They have these insane deadlines to meet, and it is almost impossible with the amount of people they do not have. And if you step away from a project or don't finish in time, Marvel will essentially blacklist you, meaning you will never work with them ever again. And that really sucks because Marvel is what's going to put your name out there in the VFX world. It'll get you more work, more jobs, more projects. So how do we fix this? Well, it's actually quite simple. Step 1, slow down the release schedule. Give the audience some time to breathe between releases. Give the VFX workers more time to work on the projects. Let them make it their best work, so we don't end up with stuff like this. Step 2, hire directors with an actual vision for their movies. Hire directors that will put their own spin on things. Hire directors who know what they want. And step 3, this one's quite simple. Hire more artists. And I know, Marvel, this may seem like a blunder in the short run. Oh no, our profits are going to take a hit because we pay our artists billions of dollars because it's that apparent. I know that was a joke, but listen, it's an investment in the long run. More people working for a longer time means higher quality work and better movies, which means more money in the long run. And the thing is, Marvel will never acknowledge this. They'll never address the issues. The only time they'll ever take notice of the situation is when they see a drop in their profits. When people start unsubscribing from Disney Plus, when people stop seeing their movies. And that's the sad reality of it. This is all avoidable, but they don't care. They want money now. They don't care about future revenue they could be missing out on by not hiring more workers or slowing down the slate. That's a future problem, one which will most likely creep up in Phase 5. Now to talk about a movie dripping with visual effects, we have Shang-Chi. Now compared to the rest, this one's actually kind of cool. It still falls into the same Marvel traps, but it's way better than Black Widow. At least it has that. Unlike Black Widow, the good really does outweigh the bad, because wherever it may fall short, there's something else that brings it back. Shang-Chi, good character. The sister, good character. The villain, good character. Awkwafina, kind of annoying, I'm not gonna lie. This has more emotional weight than most Marvel movies, but the Marvel humor is still prevalent. I don't know who was writing Awkwafina's lines. I don't know if she was coming up with the jokes herself, but they're just so... yeah, they're not even clever. Dwight was saying the same stuff years ago.
Corrected him 5 times.
Gina said that?
Hi, my name's Gina. I'm gonna go into hiding. My new name's Gina.
I will say the less she tries to be funny, her character does become better. Like by the end, she's cool. I like her when she isn't telling jokes. The villain actually has time to breathe. We see his backstory intertwined with our protagonist. We see his motive. We can even empathize with him. And that is what I want. That is good. Great even. The fact that most Marvel movies can't even accomplish this is kind of ridiculous. Once again, the effects don't look finished. They feel rushed. Like the VFX team had no time to finish their shots. They didn't. But I think we need to talk about the MCU third act final battle syndrome. I think that a lot of movies do this, and it isn't exclusive to Marvel, but I think these are some of the best examples of it. I genuinely believe that the executives running the whole circus wholeheartedly believe that if they do not have some crazy, super ridiculous, over-the-top CGI monster final battle, that the movie will bomb. And it is super apparent, especially here, because the ending starts off relatively normal, 2 sides gonna duke it out, and if you skip a few minutes ahead, you will be so utterly lost. The movie just explodes, but they didn't really need to do any of this. They could have left the big monsters out and just had them duel. But what is Marvel if not a franchise known for devolving into mediocrity? And the thing is, the movie would have been better. They've proved earlier that they can do quality action fight scenes. They've shown us multiple times in this movie. So now tell me why they decided to abandon that and show us a CG monster versus a CG monster with little CG characters fighting in a CG environment. There are some things this movie gets right. There's actually color here. It's a good introduction into a new character. The pacing is actually pretty solid. They introduced this really cool assassin dude. They never say his name or anything. I had to look it up. Apparently his name is the Death Dealer, and he was the quote-unquote secondary antagonist. What? He's in like 4 scenes. The Soul Eater monster is more of a secondary antagonist than this guy. And obviously the guy they called the Death Dealer is a one-off, because, say it with me, what is Marvel if not a franchise known for devolving into mediocrity? They could have done something cool with this character. His name is literally the Death Dealer. There's definitely something there, and they just said, no. No, he's a one-off. There's just something about this film that just feels uninviting. Where if I ever get that Marvel itch, I'm never gonna put on Shang-Chi. But nevertheless, it's a good movie. 7 out of 10. But green screen syndrome is alive. It's alive and alive. It will never die. Do I have to talk about this one? Yeah, I do. Really? Oh my god. Okay. So Eternals. What do I even say? What do I even say? Yeah. Okay. Here. So, Eternals. This one is rough. This is a 2.5 hour long sludge fest. Think about getting slowly stabbed for 2.5 hours, but it's just one stabbing. One stab, but it lasts for 2.5 hours. And I have no problem with long movies. Some of my favorite movies are 3 hours plus, but you have to use the time well. Eternals does not. This is one long exposition nightmare. They don't waste any time throwing information in your face. From the very first scene, we get this boring text crawl trying to set up the plot. It feels like they finished the movie and had to add it in at the last second because they never explained the vital information in the actual movie. And the fact that it was the most streamed superhero movie on Disney Plus for 2022 is insane to me. Not only because it was released in 2021, or that there are quite literally dozens of better superhero movies, but that you all spent 4.2 billion with a B, 4.2 billion minutes watching it. Don't worry, I'll do the math for you. That means Eternals was watched over 26 million times. I truly have no words. The movie knows how goofy the plot really is, so they try to hide it with this emergence thing. Oh, the Celestial's gonna break out of the Earth egg, blowing up the world. That's not the real plot. You're probably asking, so Patrick, what is the real plot of Eternals then? Well, would you believe it if I said it was a love story? Yes, I'm being so serious. But this is where it gets kind of funny. So the Eternals are not real people. They're like robots. They don't change, they don't evolve, they don't grow, they don't age. Now, wouldn't it be funny if one of the Eternals liked or even loved one of their fellow Eternals, but they were trapped in a 13-year-old's body?
Why did Arisha make me this way?
Just for a bit of banter. And this is what the movie is really about. Sprite looks 13. She's really 7,000 years old, but no one would ever know because she looks 13 and she loves Icarus. She's his #1 fan, but as you'd expect, the love cannot be reciprocated because she looks 13. I'm being honest here. This is the only thing I got out of this whole miserable experience. Either cringing at Sprite or laughing at Sprite.
Because of them, now I want to know what it feels like to grow up. To fall in love.
Everything else was either incredibly forgettable or just so boring. None of these characters are likable, none of them are written well. The whole design of the Eternals, the ship, the suits, the powers, it looks off. And this Forge thing was ripped straight out of Destiny. This is something no one really talks about, but the Eternals are so incredibly underpowered that they were designed to kill deviants, and they're not really good at it. Homelander is stronger than Icarus. That's not even a debate. She can turn stuff into other stuff. And this guy has finger guns and
Kamehameha Hamaha Mythic.
This team should be crunked out the wazoo if we're being honest. Hulk solos the entire team. Anyways, Icarus flies into the sun because why not? And Sprite gets to grow up. What a movie. Oh my god. It's a 2 out of, maybe a 1. It's horrible. Don't watch this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And we're back with another segment. This one's a bit shorter. And this one's about the villains. All of the Marvel show villains have been incredibly forgettable. We have so many different but similarly bland villains that you don't care about any of them. I can't even tell you who the villain was for Eternals. Imagine it like this. You go to the dentist some 18 odd times a year because let's say you have horrible teeth and every time you go you have a different dentist. You have no further connection to your dentist because it keeps changing. Now in reality a dentist visit is very clinical and that's what these shows are starting to feel like. They feel sterile, as if they have to have a villain in there just to fit the standard model of a hero and a villain. Now think about it like this. You have 18 different villains, 18 different dentists, and every time you see a movie, go to the dentist, it keeps changing. So you can't form this attachment to a villain if they keep changing. And this is why they're all forgettable, because there's just so many. And this brings me to the larger issue. There really isn't one major villain spanning the whole phase. You could say it's Kang, but he only shows up once. And then this only contributes to how disconnected this all really feels. Because what is at the core here? It's not the Avengers, I can tell you that much. The way the earlier phases introduced new stuff was by having their set Avengers group and slowly dipping their toes into other avenues and looping it back in. But now, they can't really do that. They don't have anything to loop these series back into. There is no Avengers movie tying everything together, and that's definitely a comfort thing. We've seen these Avengers for so long that we're comfortable with these characters, but now that they're gone, we don't really have anything else. And that's why I enjoyed these legacy characters coming back the most, because I can almost feel the old Marvel in there. But once again, that's not the case anymore, further contributing to how isolated all of these characters are from one another. And my point will only prove itself the deeper we get into Phase 4, and will become even more apparent in Part 2. So much of Marvel is cluttered with filler. Just look at all of Hawkeye. Most of that show was just straight filler. Look at Hawkeye, another passing the torch sort of thing, dealing with Clint's trauma, giving someone else the title of Hawkeye, and then for no reason we get another random subplot. And the worst offender is Hawkeye. Not only is the entire villain subplot horrendously mismanaged, I was kind of wrong on this one. Hawkeye isn't that bad. I never made a video on it. I watched it when it first came out and hated it. Yeah, I'm taking that back. If I'm being honest, it's kind of alright. It has its issues, but for some reason, I enjoyed watching it. It felt like a palate cleanser after Eternals, taking it back to basics. And I know I said earlier that street level stuff is boring when we have cosmic entities roaming around, and I stand by that. But Eternals is awful. I don't know, I could be in a Marvel kind of mood, but it's a relatively well-rounded show. A nice passing the Hawkeye torch to someone else. And I think Kate Bishop is the best new age Avenger we've gotten so far. She's likable and acts like a hero. A sizable chunk of the show is dedicated to building her up as a genuine hero, a good person with morals that knows what a hero is, and her reason for becoming a hero is connected to Hawkeye. Both of them have good chemistry. They bounce off of each other really well, but the issue is not with these two. This was the best part of the show. The issue lies with the villain, or villains. I don't know, the bad people. First, it was set up that Salamanca was the villain. By the way, this is the biggest sin the show commits. Having Lalo over here as the fake-out villain? Fake-out villains are fine, but I don't know, how about we make him the actual villain versus the slew of weak villains we end up getting? Demoting Lalo to a background character is ridiculous. Echo might be the most useless character here. I really don't care about the entire Tracksuit Mafia, quite literally a gang from Gotham Knights. It's just the same character model copy and pasted a bunch of times. Echo would be cool if she did something. She literally does nothing of importance. Nothing. She leaves the gang, I think, but that's about it. We don't spend enough time with her or her friend for me to care about her leaving the gang and betraying her friend. It's too much with all the other stuff going on. I understand that Clint also needed a villain, and Echo was that villain, and Kingpin was the one that tied everything together, but the tracksuits were the wrong choice, and I don't know. Who could we bring in to replace the Tracksuit Mafia as a whole? I have an idea. How about Yelena? Oh wait, she's already here in the show and connected to Kingpin. So then why are the tracksuits still here? If they don't matter? They're not even a secondary villain. They're like a tertiary villain. Yelena has a way deeper connection to Clint than the tracksuits ever will. I'm sorry, but Echo feels forced in to fill a void that doesn't exist. The show would have run smoother without her. And I want to address this now. In my MCU shows video, I made a mistake of saying that Kingpin was a one-off, and for that I deeply apologize. It's my fault. I didn't read the comic where he was only blinded, and then like a week after I posted the video, some leaked photos dropped of Kingpin in the Echo show. So yeah, I blundered, my apologies. But anyways, this series is the start of a new street level branch of Marvel. We're gonna have stuff like the Echo show, the Daredevil show, characters like Kingpin, even the Thunderbolts, and I really couldn't care less than I already do. Daredevil is the only thing that really grabs my attention. The rest feels almost like something to fill your time between larger movies. Or I'm just fatigued and I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Is my mindset skewed? Maybe a little. Is this too much content to consume at once? Yes it is. Why am I doing this to myself? I don't know. Hawkeye is like a 5 out of 10. So, what's left on the list? Oh, only one more left. Which one is it? Oh. So the final project of today is Spider-Man Into the Spider... No? Oh, my bad. I meant to say No Way Home. And this is my controversial opinion for the video. Spider-Man No Way Home is incredibly overrated. It's a fine movie, but by no means is the best Spider-Man media we've ever had. and on rewatch, it's kind of boring. The huge reveal of the other Spider-Man really carries this movie, and it only really works the first time. And after you get accustomed to that, it's whatever. It's never gonna draw you back in like it did the first time. And people who say it's their favorite are either fully engulfed by the hype or get overwhelmed by the nostalgia. And that's fine, I don't want to take that away from you, but try and look at it from a different perspective. I saw this goober talking about if you swap out Tobey and Andrew for different Spider-Man, then the movie would stay the exact same, albeit less references. But think about it like this. We have Doc Ock and the gang, and then 2 Spider-Men we've never seen before. The story would, in theory, function the same, I agree on that, but people wouldn't really care that much. They'd feel let down, and they would see it for what it really is, a Marvel movie with Spider-Man in it. And I think that's the best way to describe it. It's the quality that Marvel brings with the charm of Spider-Man, because if you peel back the curtain and separate these two things, you kind of see it for what it really is, a standard Marvel movie polished with Tom Holland's face to fill in any gaps that may pop up. There is an obscene over-reliance on CGI, like why are Daredevil's glasses CGI? The effects don't look amazing, some look unfinished, and it's just the same thing Marvel has been doing for ages. No new ground is being broken. The cinematography is basic, there's literally only one scene that evoked any real emotion in me. There's this weird pause in the movie so audiences can cheer for the big reveals. Peter goes on the same arc that he does in his other 2 movies, the one of trying to have it all. And this message just feels tiresome after the 3rd go. This isn't new, he tried to have it all in the last movie, and also the movie before that. But all of these things get glossed over when you only really care about Andrew Garfield saving MJ and that being a callback to TASM 2. You get this dopamine spike where you become oblivious to all of the other shortcomings. But you know what? This is the first movie to actually fit into the multiversal category. I'm convinced the whole multiverse title means absolutely nothing, because out of the 9 projects we've gotten so far, only 3 have anything to do with the multiverse. Loki, this one, and What If. Yeah, it's more like 2 projects. The rest all happen on Earth, and magically none of them ever cross over. It makes the whole Marvel is super interconnected concept look like a joke. The ending to this movie is literally happening at the same time as Hawkeye, even in the same place. Look! But there's no crossover, no connection, no Easter egg, no cameo, nothing at all. But if we're being honest, this is a nice reset for Spidey, a clever way to cut all these pre-existing Marvel ties. He can start fresh, on his own, and I like that. This is like a 7 out of 10. It's not a bad movie, people just give it way too much credit, and it was a satisfying end to the first half of Phase 4. Yeah, that was only the first half. 2021 wasn't amazing. Okay, we're done here for today. I'll finish this later, go watch this video for now.